Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Rising Tide Leadership Podcast. Identity and Influence Leadership Lesson 46. Leaders do it first.
Yes,
Dr.
sir.
Lim, what's up, man?
What's going on, man? Always great to be with you. Always great to have these conversations about leadership, man. Excited about what this episode will bring for us today.
Yeah, we know that leadership back in the old days was about giving orders and having other people do work for you, but that's not leadership today. It's a different way of doing things. Real leadership means leading by example, and that's what this leadership lesson is all about, showing the way, doing the hard work first. Why don't you start out by letting the audience know, what were you thinking when you wrote this leadership lesson, and what's the gist of it?
Yeah, just as most of the lessons, I've watched leaders and I see what leaders do, and then I write about how I don't want to do what these leaders are doing, right? So that's the main gist of every leadership lesson, seeing a leader do a thing and then realizing, oh man, I don't want to be like that. And so this one has to do with leading teams and leading out of experience and creating a leadership culture that provides accountability and shows loyalty and teamwork. It's not about creating this leadership culture where you just bark out orders and expect people to do a thing that you've never done yourself. So that's what this lesson's about.
Yeah, and I'd really like to start out there and talk about the difference between telling and leading. Why is it so frustrating for teams when leaders just give orders instead of, just helping them understand and do it in a different way?
Giving orders still gets the job done, but giving orders is fundamentally a disconnection, right? It's a leader giving orders for something that leader doesn't necessarily know anything about. And then it's also a disconnection because, you're not connected to your team. You don't have that shared experience. You're just telling them what to do. And telling someone what to do isn't leadership.
Yeah, how do you distinguish then between telling somebody what to do as
Yeah.
opposed to leading them through it?
So telling them what to do is just simply that. You're just telling them what to do. You're just given an order. It's disconnected, like I was just saying. Leading someone through a task or an experience is about guiding others through their experience because you've had this experience yourself. So you've lived it, so you can help them walk through it. You know how it feels like. You know what the problems will be, like what the frustrations will be, what the stressors will be. And so you're able to guide people through that experience because you've done it yourself. And so I think that's the difference. Like telling someone what to do is just disconnected, but leading them through it is walking them through their experience because you've experienced it.
So can you share an example where you saw somebody lead by doing first rather than just giving commands?
Yeah. So I had worked for this guy, and it was the first time I worked with a leader that walked me through my experience based on his experience. It was when I was a professor at a college, and I had this mentor, this leader that I worked with, and I still talk to him weekly to this day. But he had a wealth of experience, and so I was able to just go to him with my experience, and then he was able to walk me through what to expect, what's going to feel like. And he was able to walk me through my experience because he had experienced it himself. He was able to lead us because he had walked through that experience. And interestingly enough, I wrote this lesson after that experience because then I worked for a leader that was just barking out orders and didn't necessarily walk us through things. And so then, because I had context for a leader that walked us through our experience based on his experience, I was able to, in my next leadership opportunity, there was a leader that hadn't done any of that. And so, I was able to see the difference in leadership, and I wasn't as connected, and I didn't necessarily want to follow that leader as much because it was a disconnected kind of leadership.
Why does leading by example build credibility so much faster than just simply delegating?
Well, when you are a leader speaking out of your experience, you can actually walk people through their experience because you've experienced it. It isn't just telling somebody to do a thing. Now, you can still get stuff done by telling people to do a thing and just giving orders. Lots of organizations work that way. But a leader that can walk you through the experience because of their experience, I mean, that's just a different experience. and you're connected to that leader, it actually helps you to avoid stressors, and it actually helps you to get through it a little quicker because they're speaking out of experience. And so, I mean, it builds credibility because you're connected, because you are doing this thing together. And yeah, it's way faster than simply delegating. Delegating is that disconnected experience.
So, talk to me about what happens inside a team's morale structure when they see the leader willing to get their hands dirty.
It's that, it's that leadership ability built off of referent power, because you have that relationship, because you have that shared experience, because they see you getting your hands dirty as a leader. You're modeling for them what you expect them to do. It helps your team know that the leader's like one of us. There's that, again, shared experience together, doing it together, getting your hands dirty together. It just kind of builds team morale, and it builds loyalty, and it builds teamwork.
How important is a leader's example in setting the standard for an entire organization?
The team will do exactly what the leader does. Attitude reflects leadership. It's hard to keep your team accountable for what you're not willing to do yourself as a leader. So I've seen leaders create cultures of do as I say, not as I do. And it just trickles down to the team members. And so when you create that kind of a culture, your team members are going to do the same exact thing that you do. And so setting the example as a leader and setting the standard as the leader to be willing to get your hands dirty, to be willing to do the hard work will trickle down into the team and trickle down into the organization. And you'll create this leadership culture where people are willing to follow you and do exactly as you do.
Let's talk about some practical steps in the do it first as a leader. What are some ways that leaders can gain at least a working knowledge of what their team's doing without trying to be the expert in everything?
The thing is, you don't have to be the expert at everything, but you have to have experience in what it is that you're leading your folks in, so that you could better lead them, so that you know how it feels, you know what the stresses are like, you know what the expectations are like. When you're able to lead out of experience and walk people through your experience, it helps you to be a better leader. And so at the very least, get your hands dirty. The thing that you're leading people through. Do the work so that you know how it feels, you know where it's coming from. You can know what to expect from them because you've done that work yourself. And so you don't want to like push people too hard because you know the work that it takes to get that done.
Yeah, let's talk about the way that leaders act. How important is it to model the same behavior that they expect from their team?
If you want to hold your team members accountable, you also need to be accountable, or you're creating this do as I say, not as I do kind of culture. And if that's what you're creating, then at least know that that's what you're creating. But they're going to follow you simply because you're the boss, and not out of referent power, not out of respect, not out of this, I will follow you anywhere. What you model for your team, the team's going to do. I mean, basic principle. And so if you model hard work for your team, they're going to work hard. But if you're going to be lazy about it, if you're going to be disconnected, and if it's not a shared experience, that's what you're going to have. You're just going to be managing and not necessarily leading.
Yeah, there's a lot of complexity in leadership, as we talk about on the Rising Tide Leadership Podcast here on YouTube, where we say, look, we want to simplify the complexities of your
Yeah.
leadership journey because there is a lot going on. So, why is acknowledging the complexity of a task within a team so important before a leader?
I think it's helpful to know the complexity of the task, because then you can find the right people to do the right work, right? It goes back to that Jim Collins principle, get the right people on the bus and then put them in the right seats. And if you're expecting somebody to do the work that they're not capable of doing, then you got to train them to do that. You know what I mean? And so knowing the complexity of the task helps you to get the right people to do that task. And then, I've seen leaders like, they didn't necessarily know the complexity of the task. They tasked somebody with it that wasn't necessarily skilled to do it. And then they get frustrated at that team member for not being able to do it. That's their fault as the leader for not understanding, first of all, the complexity of the task, and not putting the right people in that role to complete that task. And then they end up getting frustrated about it. I mean, that's their fault as a leader, because you didn't understand the complexity of the task and didn't get the right person in it. So understanding the complexity of the task, getting the right people in it, helps you to run a smoother organization. It helps you get.
So, what's the difference between giving guidance based on experience versus just issuing orders?
So when a leader doesn't understand the complexity of the task, you can't know that you're putting the right people on that task. It's that whole Jim Collins principle of getting the right people on the bus and then getting them in the right seats. And so when a leader understands the complexity of the task, you can then task the right person for that particular task and the complexity of that task, and you can get the thing done. I've seen leaders that don't understand the complexity of the task and just task somebody with that responsibility that didn't necessarily have the ability to do that. And then they get frustrated at that team member because they didn't do the work. Where if you would have better understood the complexity of the task, you would have known not to put that person on that task and you would have put somebody else on it. And so that's the leader's responsibility. And so acknowledging the complexity of the task is important because it helps you then to task the right people with that particular responsibility. Just giving orders when you don't know the complexity of the task might lead to frustration because you're tasking the wrong people to that particular response, to that particular task. And so, yeah, having an understanding of the complexity of the task and having the right people attacking that task really helps you in leadership.
Yeah, I want to ask a follow up about getting the right person to do the right task. So, what's the difference between giving guidance based on experience versus just issuing orders to whoever?
Like you can get the job done doing both, but giving guidance is about leading people and developing people based off of understanding, again, the complexity of the task and understanding the people well enough to know that like this person can do this task. Issuing orders keeps that distance between the leader and the team. And that might be what you want, that distance, but just know that I think that gets to be a little bit more frustrating if you don't know the complexity of the task or the people that you're tasking that task with. You know what I mean? So, yeah, giving guidance is about walking people through it based off of your experience. And then issuing orders is just like, hey, you do this and just tell me when you're done with it, which, works as well, but it doesn't necessarily develop people.
Yeah, that's really interesting. You really want to do the work with your people. So, how does working alongside your team create a sense of loyalty and trust?
And it communicates to the team that you're one of us, that when we're doing this thing together. Again, that shared experience builds loyalty and trust, especially if there's a clear and compelling vision.
So, why does shared experience between a leader and a team make people more willing to do more, to go above and beyond?
Now, if the team member sees their leader doing the work, the leader then can model that hard work for the team. But if the leader's not around to model it, then the team can't know. You know how it is like when the cat's away, the mice come out to play, right? Like when the leader's gone, like I'm gonna just do what I want to do. I'm not necessarily gonna work hard because there's no accountability. You haven't necessarily built that team culture or that leadership culture where people are working hard. And if they see you as a leader work hard, they're going to work hard. So that shared experience between the leader and the team helps the team see the leader go above and beyond, which is then modeling for the team. This is how hard I want you to work.
Yeah, I think of how much of leadership is about crisis management. There always seems to be something else going on. So, in a high stakes pressure situation, why does a leader's willingness to do it first carry even more weight?
Man, if they've done it first, then that's a leader that I want to follow because they know what they're doing. They're speaking out of experience. They know what it'll feel like. They can guide me as a team member much easier because I know that they know what they're doing. It's much easier to follow somebody that has that do it first mentality and that willingness to do it first and guide me through it.
So, can you describe how this principle plays out when a team is facing stress, uncertainty, or some kind of crisis?
Yeah, as I was thinking through that, I was wondering who's stressed for who, right? So if the leader is stressed, then the team will be stressed. Attitude reflects leadership. But if the team is stressed and the leader is not, depending on the leadership culture, a leader can lead a team through that stress because they're not stressed, especially if they've been through it before. They know what the experience is going to be like. They know what it'll feel like. So people will look to the leader when there's stress and uncertainty. And if the leader's stressed, then the team will be stressed. But if the leader's not stressed and the team's stressed, the leader can walk them through that because they've experienced it.
What's one of the main takeaways, a key takeaway for leaders who want to stop just telling their people what to do and they say, man, I just want to start leading?
You can only bring people to where you've been yourself. You know, if you haven't done the thing that you're leading people through, then get in there, gain the experience, and know how to better understand and know how to lead your team. And then people will follow you because you know how to do this work.
Well, that about does it for Leadership Lesson 46. Do it first.
Sure.
For the audience, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this episode with somebody who needs to hear it. And sign up for our newsletter. It's free. We give you all the good stuff. Until next time, Dr. Len, appreciate it,
sir.
brother. Thanks as always.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.